Imagine you could create any company you wanted. You could retool it any way, anything you've learned from, any book you've read, any author you've heard about. You could take an organization you're part of and completely recraft it, and when you were done, it was exactly what you were hoping for. Now imagine you could describe that resulting organization in just one word. What would that word be? When I pose this question to audiences, I often hear the words productive, positive, engaging, happy, fun, profitable, great competitor, dominant in their market. All those kind of words come flowing out. I have a new word for you to consider. How about joyful? Now, I will tell you, joy is not a word you often find in a business context, but it is the word we've chosen here. We fundamentally believe it is possible to systematically and repeatedly get to the business value of joy. To understand where this came from for me, how I got here, how I got to be the guy talking with you about joy, I have to tell you a little bit about my personal history for this to make sense. See, I fell in love with this profession in 1971 when I was just 13 years old. I typed in a 2-line program into a computer and it came back in an old roll of paper and clacked out the words "Hi, Rich," because that's what I told the computer to do. And I was hooked. I knew what I was going to do the rest of my days. I can tell you I've been in this profession now in some way, shape, form, or another for over 40 years, and my kids are still astounded that I was able to choose what I wanted to do when I was only 13 years old. But this was an infinite canvas for me. This looked like a big frontier. For some reason, I knew that software was going to change everything, and I just wanted to be a part of it. I got early chances to do it professionally. Before I can even drive, I was creating the first email system that the county school system that I was a part of ever had. That term email wouldn't even be invented for another decade. But we were already exchanging messages back and forth from these county schools. I couldn't believe how exciting this was and the opportunity for innovation. And I eventually decided to get a formal education. I came up to the University of Michigan. I got 2 degrees in computer science and computer engineering and launched into a career that, quite frankly, quickly went from joy to fear. And then from fear to chaos and chaos to bureaucracy. What happened? Well, very quickly I fell into this trough of disillusionment where I realized that I was either part of or I was leading death march efforts. Programmers staying around the clock, missing deadlines, creating error and bug-riddled programs that were being shipped to markets and users that didn't understand how they worked, couldn't get them to work at all. And I can tell you this was the opposite of joy for me, and I was seriously contemplating getting out of the industry. My first attempt to wrestle this into control was to pull the big chaos lever to bureaucracy, to implement procedures and policies and sort of a project management police type of effort where we would delineate committees and stage gates and forms and sign-offs and approvals. In the world of chaos, it was the land of never getting anything done. In the land of bureaucracy, it was the land of never getting anything started. And usually you still have to get things done, so people would start to form shadow groups behind the scenes to still get things done. And those were often groups, if I was leading them, they were skirting around the rules. They were still getting stuff done, but that just meant now we were living both in chaos and bureaucracy. And then finally, the part of joy that was so difficult, the part that was missing for me was that often the projects I was leading would get buried out in the backyard before they ever saw the light of day. This is the saddest story of all, when teams maybe labor away into the night, through holidays, jettisoning time with family, and personal relationships are threatened because we're working so hard to try and get something out the door, and then one day the boss comes in and says, "I'm sorry, the project is canceled. But don't worry, we have another project for you." And all you're thinking to yourself is, am I really ready to go through this again? I was seriously contemplating at that stage of my career getting out entirely. but I am the perennial optimist. If you put me in a room full of manure, I will keep digging till I find the pony. And my search didn't lead me to technological things, it led me to human things. My search led me to authors who wrote books about management, about teamwork, about trust, about organizational design. Some of the books I was drawn to in my early days were books like Peter Senge's The Fifth Discipline on the art and practice of building learning organizations, Peter Drucker's book on management, Tom Peters' book In Search of Excellence, John Naisbitt's book Megatrends. All of these books were letting me know that there was hope on the other side of the canyon, the other side of my trough of disillusionment. Unfortunately, they would describe those wonderful companies and organizations and theories about why things should be better on the other side, but they didn't tell me how to get there. It wasn't until 1999 when I read a book by a guy named Kent Beck called Extreme Programming Explained, and then saw a video on an industrial design firm in Palo Alto, California called IDEO. Nightline had done a 30-minute segment on them. And in that moment, having read that book and seen that video, I had what Franz Johansson calls a click moment, where everything fell into place. All of my preparation, all of my pain informed me as to what I wanted to accomplish. At that point, I was a vice president of product development, and I was in the place where I realized that the risk of staying the same was far greater than the risk of change, and I began running towards change because I wasn't running towards risk, I was running away from it. You see, what was at risk in those days was me. I didn't want to be in this profession anymore. I was 40 years old. I had no idea what I was going to do the rest of my career. I just knew I couldn't keep doing things the way I've always done them. And in that moment, I chose change. I chose significant change. I was a VP of a 30-year-old tired public company, and in the next 2 years, transformed that organization. And I would probably still be here today were it not for the internet bubble burst of 2001, when everything was taken away from me. My job, my career, my stock options, my pay, heck, some might even say my entire industry disappeared in that moment, where everybody thought the IT industry was going offshore and would never return again. And it was in that moment where me and my co-founders decided to build Menlo, based on everything we had learned in those 2 years as I had as VP of product development at that tired old public company. And what I'm going to talk about in the other segments today is what happened. What are the ingredients that get to this very tangible definition of joy that we talk about here at Menlo all the time? And joy for us is defined. It's not an ethereal concept. Joy is very practical for us. You see, for us, joy is defined as getting the work of our hands, our hearts, and our minds out into the world. We want that work that happens in our room to get out into the world and be widely adopted and delight the people for whom it's intended. For us, joy can be expressed very tangibly when someone who touches the work of our hearts, our hands, and our minds comes back and says, "You guys did that. I love that software. You changed my life. You made my life better. My job is better because of you. My life is better because of you. My work is better because of you. Thank you." That's joy for us. And that's everything we've done here is laser beam focused on producing that kind of joy in the world. The question I want to explore now is joy visible? Does it matter? Does it make for business value? Can you see it? Can you feel it? Can you touch it? Is it so palpable that people can sense it the minute they walk into our space? We have many visitors here at Menlo. We will host over 3,000 people this year alone who will come from all over the planet to visit our team in the basement of a parking structure in downtown Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I believe they're coming for a reason. They're coming to learn some tangible lessons about what it takes to build an intentionally joyful culture and see how we've done it and take away what they can from their visits here. And the first thing they're confronted with as they open the front doors of our space is this wide open office environment. There are no walls, there are no offices, there are no cubes, there are no doors. Yes, we have one of those vilified open office environments that Fast Company recently wrote about, saying that this kind of office, this open office floor plan, is an idea born in the mind of Satan in the deepest caverns of hell. And I can tell you, when those articles come out, articles that claim psychological data that proves they don't work, people send me those articles and they say, Rich, why is it that this works for Menlo? Why doesn't it work anywhere else? And I tell them it's very simple. We didn't build an open and collaborative workspace. We built an open and collaborative culture, and we fit our workspace to our culture. That is a huge difference about how you approach building a culture within a company. You see, a lot of companies, what they do is they get glommed onto an idea like an open office floor plan. They tear down the walls. They put a bunch of people who don't know each other, don't trust each other, maybe don't even care that much for one another, jam them out into a big open room and say, now get along. And they're surprised when it doesn't work. I can tell you, if you're going to build any kind of culture, it has to be intentional and it takes time, and it almost always has to begin with trust, the kind of trust you get from focusing on the people. And as you go into our space, what you're going to notice is you're going to notice that it is noisy here. But it's not the noise of chit-chat, it's the noise of work. This is one of our most important qualities. We share this quality with our namesake, the Menlo Park, New Jersey lab of Thomas Edison. You see, in Edison's lab, what he was counting on more than anything was the serendipity that occurs when people overhear the ideas of others. We embrace that noise. We want people to hear each other. We want people to springboard off of those ideas. And this actually results in one of the very few rules we have here at Menlo. One of the strongest rules we have is you cannot wear earbuds while you're working. This makes us very unusual for the tech industry, which typically when people invite me to their offices, what I notice is they invite me in and they say, Rich, this is where our technical team works. And we walk through a sea of darkened cubicles, and everyone has their back turned towards the door, and they're silently clicking away on keyboards with earbuds in their ears. And we get to the corner office, and the executive closes the door and says, now let's first talk about our communication challenges. I'm like, really? Do you think it's because nobody's talking to one another? And they say, no, we've got all the latest electronics installed. But I can tell you there is no substitute for the visceral sense of the human energy of hearing the noise of work surrounding you. And here at Menlo, you can actually see the teamwork because we work in this big open room. Team has full control of the space. They can form it however they choose, and for all the years of our history, they've chosen to work shoulder to shoulder, front to front. They push the tables together. The space itself is flexible and it's visual. We have pull downs from the ceiling. We have lightweight aluminum tables so the team can make the space however they choose. They can pull these tables across the room. They can push them together. They can change the space however they choose. There's no space police. There's no permission to ask. There's no czar of the space. The team changes the space however they choose. It changes in small ways every day and dramatic ways every now and then. And I can tell you, I sit out right in the room with everybody else. As the CEO of the company, there's no gifted C-suite for me. I'm not in a corner office. I'm sitting out in the same kind of tables that everybody's at in the room. And quite frankly, I don't get to choose where I sit. I go where the team puts me. The space is also very visual. You can see all the artifacts on the wall. They're push pinned to the wall. So all of our work plans are on the wall. All of our most important artifacts are printed out and push pinned to the various walls we have around Menlo. We don't want to hide things in file cabinets. We don't want to hide things on disk drives. We keep it out in the open where everyone can see. And this element of our system, this base system of open and collaborative work environment leads to building what we call a learning organization. Learning is very important in our industry. We've got to be learning all the time. In fact, even if we are learning all the time, we're still falling behind because our industry is an industry of change. I can tell you this element of our learning system is supported by books. We have books everywhere here. They're ubiquitous. We order books when everybody asks for them. But books is only a small part of our learning system. You see, what's most important about the learning system we've created here at Menlo that I believe leads directly to the joyful outcomes we create is how we organize our team. You see, when you look through the room and you look out in this big open space and you wander around, you notice something unusual. We're all working two to a computer. 2 people, 1 computer. We assign these pairs and we switch them every 5 working days. This connects us intellectually. It connects us emotionally. It connects us physically as we share the work together, working on the same task at the same time all day long. This produces an amazing amount of learning as people share information back and forth, as they collaborate with one another, as they bring their own personal work experiences, their own personal life experiences, their educational experiences, their intuition, their talents, their skills, all being brought to bear while they work with another human being and try and solve one of the difficult problems that we solve as a company. This simple construct of assigning our teams to work in pairs and switching the pairs every 5 days revolutionizes the results that we have here at Menlo. And I can assure you, this is one of our keystone habits here for how we do work. Now I want to talk about innovation. I want to talk about the innovation within a team. I want to talk about the innovation that's needed to create amazing products for your marketplace. Now, a lot of times people look at innovation, they look inside the tribes that are producing the innovations. And in software, there's 3 kinds of tribes in software. There's the technical tribe that actually brings software to life. There's the business tribe that pays the technical tribe to bring that software to life. And then there's, well, quite frankly, there's a lost tribe, a tribe that everyone's forgotten about, a tribe that's so critically important but is almost never found in any technical team. And it's the users, the stupid users, the people we write dummies books for. This is the lost tribe, the ones the anthropologists hack their way through the jungles trying to find. We need to figure out how to re-engage that lost tribe so we can build products that actually delight the people who are going to use the work of our hearts, our heads, and our minds. And we want to make sure that when we bring that technology to them, it will actually perform the way it's needed to. And so the innovation I want to talk to is not the innovations within the tribes, but the innovations between the tribes. John Naisbitt said it best in his book back in 1982 called Megatrends. He said the greatest breakthroughs that we're going to have in the century we're in now, remember he was writing this in 1982, are not going to occur because of technology, but because of an expanding concept of what it means to be human. I will tell you this is more true today than it's ever been. You can see it everywhere. We're separated by our technology rather than drawn together. It's not that technology is bad and that we shouldn't have it, but we have to figure out a way to snap a line between technology and humanity in a way that doesn't separate us, but rather brings it together. Here at Menlo, when we work in this big open and collaborative workspace, you might be surprised to learn that when we communicate with each other, across the tribes, within the tribes, between us and our customers, we don't use electronics. When we're in the room together, we use what we like to call high-speed voice technology. It's built right into the operating system. The hardware was installed at birth. Vocal cords, tympanic membranes, auditory nerve stimulation of the brain. It's supported by body language and eyebrows. We actually communicate with one another using our voices rather than electronics. And we have eliminated meetings as a way to get together. We hate meetings. We think they're mind-numbing, spirit-sucking, energy-draining devices of management, so we've pretty much gotten rid of them. We do, however, have one meeting a day. It's called by a dartboard on the wall. The dartboard has an alarm clock in it. The alarm clock goes off at 10 o'clock every morning. Why a dartboard needs an alarm clock, I have no idea, but this one has it. We programmed it at 10 o'clock every morning. Bong, 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 bong. Everybody in the room stands up, gathers in a circle. It begins to look like a cult. We grab a plastic Viking helmet as everyone gathers. There'll be 50 to 60 people in this human circle that forms. We grab the plastic Viking helmet. Why do we like the Viking helmet? Well, it has 2 horns, and because we work in pairs, we report out in pairs, so having a 2-handled token control the meeting is very convenient. And what happens here is we talk about what we're working on. We talk about where we need help. We talk about things we're stuck on. We talk about progress we've made. We talk about things in our personal lives that we think are important to the whole team. I might talk about something that we think is important to the whole team in regards to some event that's going to be held in the future. And so this is our way of gathering together once a day, 60 people. This token passes around the circle, and the meeting typically takes no longer than 13 minutes. I defy most companies to begin a meeting of 60 people in 13 minutes, let alone call it, start it, hold it, give everyone a chance to report out, complete it, and get back to work in 13 minutes. If you're going to have meetings, keep them short. I think the most important aspect of this kind of ritual, this kind of ceremony, is what happens after the meetings. The people who are interested in a particular subject will gather around that subject afterwards before they go back to work. This is how we keep the meeting short. The other innovation in conversation and ceremony and ritual is the ones that occur between us and our clients. One of those is a weekly show and tell where we actually get together with our clients face to face if possible, or electronically if they're far away. But we make sure we're reconnecting with them every 5 days in our cycle. Everything here at Menlo is driven in this structured 5-day cycle that says we're going to get together every 5th day. And we're going to talk about what we did the previous 5 days on their project, to reconnect with our clients, to make sure they understand what kind of progress have we made. And when the software is under development, we don't show the completed software in the last 5 days to our clients. We have our clients show it to us. We put them at the keyboard and the mouse. This slight change in how we do things, this subtle shift in the way a traditional show and tell might work, changes everything because it pulls the client right into the work that our team has done. And the team that did the work sits around while we have our clients show us the work we did the previous 5 days. This is incredibly important because now the client's fully on board, fully engaged. They're not sitting in the back playing with their electronics, maybe answering emails. They are front and center, while the team that did the work gets to watch and see the reaction that the team has to their work. And in this particular case, sometimes the client looks at our work and sees what we've done as the software is projected on a screen and says, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, is that what you thought we meant? That's not what we meant at all. And our answer is, woohoo! We worked on this task less than 4 hours, and less than 5 days later, we found out we got it wrong. That's awesome. Why is that awesome? Because we want to make mistakes faster. Most organizations are not killed by quick mistakes that are easy to fix because we found them quickly, but rather they're killed by big, slow-moving mistakes that sometimes take years to uncover. And by the time we uncover them, it's just too late. Sometimes our client looks at the work we've done and said, wow, that's exactly what I was hoping you would do. But now that I see it, it's not what we need. Our answer is, woohoo! We worked 4 hours on a task, and less than 5 days later, we found out we built exactly what you needed. But now you find out by actually touching the developed software, it's not what you need. See, in our world, software development is a theoretical activity up to the moment somebody actually begins touching it. And that's where we want to step back and take a look at it and draw the customer back into the project to make sure they understand where we're at. This energized meeting that we have with our client every 5 days allows the team also to feel that pride of knowing that someone out there, someone who's paying us to do our work, actually cares enough to re-engage with us and talk with us about the work we did the previous 5 days. And then final ceremony I want to talk about is one we call planning game. This is where our clients help us choose the highest priority task for the go-forward plan for the next 5 days of our work. They can look farther out than that. They can look months out ahead of that, but what we're particularly caring about is what are we going to specifically work on the next 5 days that we're going to show you in show and tell at the end of that 5-day cycle. And what our clients do is they play this paper-based planning game with us. I brought a few of these artifacts with us. No work can happen at Menlo unless and until it's first handwritten down on a 5.5 inch by 8.5 inch index card. Handwritten because we want the people who wrote the card to actually read what they wrote. And we believe it's impossible to handwrite something and not read what you wrote. written on a small card because like that old adage in life, I was going to write you a short letter, but I didn't have time, so I wrote you a long one. We want to keep it short by keeping it on a small form factor. And then we estimate the cards in hours, and we fold the card to the size of the estimate. The card I'm holding in my hand is a 16-hour card. This is what an 8-hour card would look like. You can see the spatial relationship between the two. And then our client looks at each of these cards and decides what they want us to work on by picking them up off of this table and laying them down on a planning sheet. They can get at most 32 hours worth of work on each one of these planning sheets. And in this way, the client can spatially see how much of their project team they're consuming. If they have a larger team, we'll have more of these planning sheets. Each one of these sheets represents 5 days of work for 2 people because we work in pairs. As they lay down these cards on these sheets, they consume the resource. Eventually, they run out of space on these sheets, and there are still cards left on the table, which tells them we have too much to do. What we want to do is make it obvious, make the trade-offs obvious. We want to build a tool that invites people into play rather than have them resist because they don't understand how the tool works. We can teach them that the add function is to pick up one of these little pieces of paper and put it down on the planning sheet. And the delete function is simply to set it back on the table. And when the planning is done and all the cards are placed, it's incredibly clear what's in the plan, those cards that got put on the sheet, and what is not yet in the plan, those cards that are still sitting on the table. We go through this process with every one of our clients every 5 working days. Now, I will tell you, when people see this aspect of our work, they wonder about us. They're like, Rich, you're a software team, and yet you use paper-based planning tools. Why is that? You're like the Amish of software development. And I say to them, no, we've chosen the tools we believe work better for humans. And this is a theme here, is we're not enamored with either high technology nor low technology. We want to pick the right technology for the problem we're trying to solve, and we find that a paper-based planning system like this invites participation rather than puts it off. And again, back to what are the innovations that we can do for our clients between the tribes to make sure that they are participating, they understand what's in the plan, they understand what's not in the plan. We found no more visible, visceral way to do that than this paper-based planning system. Ultimately, after this work is set in place, we then take the work and we put it up on a wall for all to see, and everyone knows what their assignments are. They use little color-coded sticky dots to indicate progress during the course of the 5 days. They put a yellow dot on a card when they begin a card. They put an orange dot on a card when they think they're done. They put a green dot on the card when someone else has checked their work, and they make sure that in fact it is ready for show and tell and they are in fact done. And so all of these visual, visible artifacts are our innovations in how we communicate internally within each team, externally with our clients, and between all of the various stakeholders that make great software come to be here at Menlo. I talked earlier about the lost tribe, the users, the ones that we call as an industry, we call them stupid. We write dummies books for them. We lord ourselves over them. We try and make people think like computers. Well, we've taken a different approach. We call it high-tech anthropology. And our goal is not to make people think like computers. Our goal is to make computers think like people. And we have people on our team, we call them high-tech anthropologists. Their job is to go out into the world as an anthropologist would and study users in their native environment. I can't emphasize this enough how important this is. There is no amount of a priori knowledge or design intuition that can replace actually visiting users in their native environment and not asking them how they want the software to work. That isn't the point of anthropological work. The point of anthropological approaches is to observe them in their native environment, discover what's needed, and then somehow, through a variety of approaches, play back to them what we've learned in a way that allows us to learn even more as we go through this exercise. So these high-tech anthropologists at Menlo, one of their goals is to see the invisible, to see the things no one would ever bring up, to go into an environment with what we call beginner's mind so that they can see things that nobody else has seen. Perhaps things that have been obvious forever, but because we're seeing them for the first time, we bring them up. We remind ourselves how important they are. Let me give you an example of this. We were engaged by a firm to create a handheld, touchscreen diesel motor diagnostic tool. Our first visit, because we knew nothing about diesel motor diagnostics, was to the Ann Arbor Transit Authority to go watch Bubba working on a bus. He thought we were going to pull him into a conference room, and we said, no, we want to watch you work. So our anthropologists went back to the bay. We're carefully listening for Bubba's vocabulary, how he describes his work. We asked him to think out loud while he was doing things. And the first thing he did after he grabbed an initial ticket, a trouble ticket, he said, well, I have to discover the initial diagnostic codes. We're writing this down, learning his vocabulary, because vocabulary is so important in high-tech anthropology. And he flipped open the back of the bus, reached down to his little bag of tricks, and pulled on a pair of rubber gloves to do his work. Our anthropologist simply noted down, Bubba wears rubber gloves when he works. Now, why would this be important? Well, when our anthropologist brought this information back to our technical team freaked out a little bit. They said, oh, by the way, it's a capacitive touchscreen. It's not going to work when he touches it wearing a rubber glove. And our engineers said, well, you know, he's just going to have to take off his gloves every time he uses the device. Our anthropologist said, no, he won't do that. We found out later that people like Bubba out in the industry referred to these kind of high-tech devices as techno-garbage. They would sometimes even sabotage them. They were so frustrated with them and hand them off to their boss and say, another one of these pieces of techno-garbage doesn't work, boss. So if we were going to introduce with our customer a product that was going to require him to take off his rubber gloves every time he went to touch it, this was going to be a big problem. Now, we knew nothing about this domain. We'd only been in it for a couple of hours, and we discovered something we thought was going to kill the adoption of this product in the marketplace, which for us is the opposite of joy. So we finally called up our customer and we said, hey, do you know your users wear rubber gloves when they work? There was dead silence on the other end of the phone, and finally one of their engineers said, they do? And another one of their engineers said, man, you guys are so lucky. We said, why is that? And they said, well, you get to go visit our end users. He says, I've been here 12 years, I've never even met one. If you've ever wondered why high-tech products frustrate you, it's because of that, because the engineers aren't going out into the world and seeing people in their native environment, bringing beginner's mind and empathizing with compassion the things that a product needs to do so it doesn't interfere with your day, but rather supports it. Now, in this particular project, it was a fairly easy change. The hardware wasn't done yet. Our customer could switch to a pressure-sensitive touchscreen so that it would work even with rubber gloves. But if that had been discovered later in the process, we may not have had a chance to switch. This goes back to this fundamental core of our belief here, and that is make mistakes faster. Get out into the world, discover them, correct them while they're still small, and we still have time and budget to fix them. Our anthropologists, as they go out into the world, they also discover the types of people that we're trying to serve, and they start to catalog these types of people into little composite sketches of them we call personas, which describe the types of people that are going to do particular projects. If, for example, we were building a website to help people plan weddings online, one of those target personas might be the bride, the young bride, the 22-ish bride who's probably very familiar with technology. Another persona may be her mother, the 50-ish mother who may not be quite as comfortable with Facebook and Twitter and Instagram as the daughter is. And we have to figure out how do we satisfy the needs of both of those types of users and how should we prioritize them against one another. And as we create these little composites, we ask our customer to prioritize them on something that looks like a bullseye target map, a persona map, where we have the customer put one person and only one type of person in the center, in the bullseye ring. Up to 2 people in the secondary ring and up to 3 people in the third ring. If we put the mother of the bride in the middle and the bride herself out in an outer ring, we might have to figure out how can we give the bride the things she needs, the Twitter and Facebook and Instagram connectors, without troubling the mother of the bride. Well, the way our design team looks at this, all design decisions are filtered through the primary persona, the one in the center. We want to make sure we're satisfying that persona first before we try and satisfy any of the others. Given the disconnect between the technological understanding of mother and daughter in this particular case, we might put a button on the home screen, since the mother is primary, and put a button that says "For brides only." The young bride goes there, touches that button, and disappears into the world she so fully understands, the technological world of Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. The mother might go there once and delight in the fact that we've tucked all that stuff away out of the way of her so she doesn't have to be bothered with it each time. So this persona mapping tool that we do at the beginning of every client project is incredibly important in achieving the design goals of delighting the people for whom the software is intended. Our anthropologists go out into the world, they collect all of this information, they build these composites, they collect the vocabulary of the users, they start to synthesize it through various brainstorming exercises and mind mapping exercises, and ultimately their goal is to turn it into pixel perfect screen designs that then our programmers can bring to life with the software that they're writing. Along the way, the anthropologists have a chance through this 5-day cycle we go through to take the advancing software back out into the world and not assess the users, but assess the designs and be humble and realize that we will make mistakes and then have to adjust later. Again, reapplying that idea of make mistakes faster as we iterate through the design process and get back to the point where we know we're delighting users with the work of our hearts, our hands, and our minds. That's our goal with high-tech anthropology, is to end human suffering in the world as it relates to technology, to not treat users as stupid, to honor what it is they know, to use their words, not ours, to not inflict the computer on the users, but rather make the computer serve the users. That's our goal. That's high-tech anthropology. I'm going to tell you a story now, and you're going to think it's a story about dogs and babies, and well, quite frankly, it is a story about dogs and babies, but if that's the point you walk away with, you will have missed a very important point. So let me tell it to you first, what the point is. Trust your team, run experiments, be open to the surprising results that might come from each of those things. 7 years ago, Tracy had little Maggie. She took 3 months off of maternity leave. Then she was ready to come back to work. Little Maggie was 3 months old at this point. Tracy came up to me and she said, "Rich, I'm ready to come back to work, but Maggie's too young for daycare and grandparents are too far away. We don't know what to do." And I looked at Tracy and I said, "Bring her into the office." And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Bring her in." Now I can tell you, just before I said that, there were these two voices on my shoulders. There was the bright voice and the dark voice screaming in my brain. Tracy never heard this argument. The one voice said, "Don't you dare say what you're about to say. HR will kill you. The lawyers will freak out. The insurance premiums will go through the roof." And the bright voice said, "It's your company. You don't even have an HR department. You love kids. Have her bring her in." So that's what we did. And I can tell you, Tracy looked out in our big open room and she said, "Rich, where will I put her?" And I said, "Tracy, she's 3 months old. She's not going anywhere. Put her in her bassinet or a car seat, wherever you're working." And she said, "Yeah, but what if she makes a fuss?" I said, "In our noisy environment, you'll never hear it." She said, "But Rich, what if she really makes that screaming baby fuss?" And I said, "Tracy, you're the mom. I trust you. You'll do the right thing. We'll work it out together. Let's run the experiment." That was 8 Menlo babies ago in the last 7 years. This has been a wonderful addition to our team. The babies can often be seen in front packs in the front of mom or dad. They will participate in design discussions. They are, if they're asleep, they're in what we call the mom's room, which is the place where you take care of all the mom needs and the baby needs. If they're awake, they're in a pack and play out in the middle of the room. It's a delightful addition to our environment. And to have this kind of humanity in the room changes who we are. We've had some surprising results from this. When Maggie came in, she did, in fact, of course, fuss the way a baby can fuss, and even at a disruptive level of noise. But what we found out was it was seldom Tracy that had to rescue the baby. The team would rush and say, no, it's my turn to hold little Maggie. They have pictures of me holding Maggie on the many tours we do, or she would fall asleep in my arms as I have this big booming voice and I would carry her around for an hour or so. And then we found out something delightful, something completely unexpected. Our customers behaved better when we brought a baby to the meeting. Who knew? Who knew that this would actually improve the relationships with our customers? People would look and say, oh my gosh, you guys are awesome. I can't believe what kind of culture you built here where you let moms bring in the babies. Oh, I wish there was a version of this. And we haven't had just moms. We've had moms and dads bring in babies. We've had couples bring in babies when they both, mom and dad, have worked here. We've had couples split their time where mom or dad would want to raise the kids at home, and they would have multiple children, and so mom and dad would split their weeks and mom would spend 2 days here and then dad 3 and then switch the other week. And so they would actually share jobs together. And then we also have a tradition of bringing dogs into the office. And one day, one of our customers was coming in for one of their weekly show and tells, and he called up and he says, hey, do you mind if I bring Buster in? And we said, sure, who's Buster? And he said, my Great Dane. And he walked in our office with his Great Dane. And what was interesting about that story wasn't that he brought his dog in. That's typical around here for people to bring dogs into our office. But that it was our customer doing this. And in fact, he wasn't allowed to do this where he worked. Now, it wasn't appropriate to do where he worked, so I'm not saying anything bad about his employer. The type of work he was in, it would have been totally inappropriate for a dog to be in his workplace. But the fact that he was choosing to participate in our culture, to be more Menlonian when he was in our room, says a great deal of how powerful and inviting culture can be if you craft it just right. Our customer was deciding to be part of our culture. So the point of this section is to think about the next time you go to a conference, read a book, get encouraged by anyone else you visited or talked to, and you come back to your office the next day, and as the office environment gets off to the races and the phone calls are coming in and the emails are arriving, the meetings are being scheduled, at some point you're going to raise your hand and say, hey, I learned something new. I learned something interesting. I want to bring something up with the team. I want to think about something we could try here, and you express some experiment you want to run based on something you've heard, and somebody there looks you in the eye and says, oh no, that won't work here. That's not who we are, or we've tried that in the past and I can assure you it won't work. At this point, I want to arm you with one simple phrase. Look them in the eye, shrug your shoulders and say, yeah, I know, but let's run the experiment. Let's try it and see what happens. My encouragement to you there is simply to say, don't be defeated in the moment. If you build a culture of experimentation, if you build a culture of trying things, see what happens, responding to how things happen, maybe in ways you didn't even expect, to be ready for surprises, you will build an amazing culture that continues to grow and learn and foster new innovations, new imagination, new kinds of creativity, new kinds of invention, and I can assure you that's what people are looking for wherever they go these days. So just remember, run the experiment, see what happens, and expect the unexpected.